Our first one, we definitely have challenges. We were like, oh, we could fix this. Our second one, let's fix this. Let's go visit Hoffman. Let's see what they're doing. Like, what's awesome about this industry is people are so willing to share and help you figure it out. And we're now making major retrofits to the first one that we probably we didn't even know about, honestly, back then.
Welcome to the Modern Car Wash Podcast. I'm your host, Dan St. Jacques. Today's guest is Jason Woodward of Sudzy Salmon Car Wash in Alaska. Sudzy Salmon is getting ready to open its third store, starting up here in January. So today we talked about what that process looked like in terms of building the brand of Sudzy Salmon, constructing this third site, which has been a winter build in Alaska, the car wash landscape in Alaska, and what Sudzy does to help foster and develop talent. We really appreciate Jason joining us, especially at this busy time with opening right around the corner. Hope you enjoyed today's show, so here it is. All right, Jason, well, welcome to the Modern Car Wash Podcast. Thanks for joining. I know it's a crazy time for you right now, so really appreciate you making the time for us.
Yeah, no worries. For sure. A little bit of time difference, I think.
Yeah. So I want to jump right into it. And just I think the best place to start is probably your background in the car wash industry. I know it's kind of unique to what we normally see or to a lot of people that we've spoken with. So if you can just talk about kind of how you got into the car wash industry and how you got started, and then with Sudzy Salmon.
Yeah, sure. I'm a commercial real estate broker in Alaska, and I had a client that was looking at buying a car wash that was an in-bay automatic. Part of that process for the due diligence side is I flew down to the Midwest Car Wash Show to kind of learn the industry and figure out if it was going to be a good buy for him. And I came back and kind of fell in love with the whole industry. It was like, this is kind of cool. I think instead of buying that in-bay automatic, though, you should buy a piece of land and we should build a tunnel, and I want in. So that started. We built our first tunnel in 2018. Developed the Sudzy Salmon brand. We did a second tunnel in 2019, and now we're doing our third one, getting ready to open January 10th, and it's taken over my life as an industry standpoint, so I really don't do a whole lot of real estate anymore, but it's fun. So I guess I like it.
Yeah, I guess so. So was there something specific that you saw at that show? Because to say, I'm going to go take a look at this investment, and I mean, I know I think about for us, this is my first year going to shows, getting to 3 shows this year, and every time we went, we ended up taking someone with us who hadn't been to a show before, and it's the same kind of thing. Yeah. You don't really have any sense of what the industry is like. Even working in the industry, prior to seeing that, you don't really have a sense of the scale and kind of just how massive it is until you get to something like that. So was there something specific that you saw where you said, oh no, this is legitimate, this is something I want to get after too?
Yeah, so we have, I'll back a little, I've always kind of loved car washes. I don't know why, but I enjoy them since I was a kid. And so I guess that was part of it. And then I just Googled car wash industry shows, expos to try and figure out what was out there. I had no idea. So going to that show is kind of like you said, an eye opener for the industry as a whole. And what I realized is we have super dirty cars in Alaska, and the industry in the lower 48 at the time, or for a while now, was going heavily towards the express tunnels. And we didn't have any in Alaska. We had one and another one that went out of business. So there really wasn't a tunnel market. And what I saw in Alaska is like this in a lot of ways. You can kind of see what the trends are in the lower 48, and Alaska is 5 to 10 years behind. So there's always an opportunity. And so I just jumped on all in, and it was fun. Initially, it was, I was still doing real estate, and we were working on the side, building this business. And the day we opened, it was crazy. There was just such a pent-up demand for a good car wash in our market, and I guess the rest was history at that point. And now I really enjoy you talk about like the industry as a whole, I really enjoy the ability to bring young adults or talent in the marketplace that really haven't had a lot of full-time jobs yet, bring them into an industry. The car wash industry seems to be ripe for that, and then help and watch them develop to wherever they tend to go. And so we've been a very young company when it comes to our workforce as well. Like I think my oldest employee is like 21 right now, and started with us when he was 17. So that's been really fun for me. And we take them to the car wash show, and opens their eyes to the career of car wash, which I don't know. I don't think anybody actually knows how cool it is unless their parent is a car wash operator. So it's definitely different. It's a different world. You don't see a lot of kids thinking I'm going to grow up to run a car wash, but I think that time is coming where people will look at it and go, wow, this is an industry that I could go to all the way to the top with a lot of, publicly traded car wash. Not a lot, but they're starting to be that way. So it's interesting.
I had a chance to meet two of your staff members actually came out here that were looking at a couple of washes. I'm not sure, I can't remember what exactly the positions were, but it's true, super young, but so interested in the industry itself, and just like they had so many questions, they were so engaged, and it was something where it wasn't just like they were killing time on a work trip here. They were so passionate about it, and it was great to see. And and at a young age like that, like you're saying, I mean, it's not necessarily an industry you expect people to get into, but once they're in, like you've seen, I mean, if you are doing a good job sort of fostering your talent, which we'll talk about too, there's no reason you can't make that your career.
Yeah, no, I agree. And if you can, and I see a lot of companies out there doing it, like career visioning and how this works going to the top. And what's really cool about this younger generation is they're just hungry. They just want to learn. Like their benefits are not necessarily pay. A lot of these guys are still living at home. And, we talk about medical benefits and they're like, oh, maybe when I'm 27, when I come off my parents. Like there's just what I look at as benefits in an industry are totally different than what they look at. And when you find the right one that sort of gets that fire, like you said, you give them a credit card and let them fly to the East Coast and they're just like hyper learners. It's crazy. It's fun though. And it's not that expensive. It sounds crazy to send a 20-year-old on the East Coast with a credit card. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, it's not like I'm send them to college. So.
And one thing I want to talk about too is, so in developing Sudzy Salmon and developing developing talent too, I was listening to your interview that was on Car Wash Magazine Live, which was a great interview, and I'll link that too in the description for this one, so people have a chance to go back and look at that too. And that conversation really was heavily focused on developing talent. So just wanted you to touch on that here too, because I think it's a really interesting approach that you have. Specifically, if you can talk about your community influencers and how you use those people to sort of find your next level of talent and put people in the right positions.
Yeah, that concept gets a lot of buzz, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to have people up here competing with me for my community influencer. So it really came from, I went to the Naval Academy, and I do a lot of, it's called the Naval Academy Information Program, which basically I represent state of Alaska and the Western region for finding talented kids that want to go to the Naval Academy. I kind of leer away from recruiting because you really got to want to go to one of those schools. And one of the things they do is community influencers. We call them COIs, so community influencers is what it is. And that's the same concept. Like sometimes you don't know what's out there unless an adult you respect or a coach or someone along those lines kind of says, hey, have you ever thought about this? And that's where we get a huge amount of our top end talent. So meaning, if I pick up one captain of a football team that may take 2 years to develop, well, they also have a whole bunch of friends that are that same caliber of motivated people that are wanting to do greater things in life, whether that's go off to college or, they have career aspirations or whatever it is. And if we can foster that while developing them in our industry, inevitably a few of them are going to stick around, I think. And people always say, well, you spend all this money and have all these benefits for, basically you're training them to leave. I'm like, well, we're training them to go into the workforce, and they're not all going to leave. And what would happen if they stayed and we didn't train them? Concept. So, I think it's worthwhile, and we don't have, knock on wood, currently don't have challenges with, finding new people to work for us. Like any company, building that bench as you work up to the upper levels is always going to be a challenge. And so how you do that is, I think, kind of the magic.
Yeah, certainly. I think obviously the advantage of doing something like that too is you have somebody who is vetting for these people, or is vetting these people essentially, or vouching for them in a way that it's not like it's a professional recommendation from a previous job or whatever it is. These are people who can speak to the actual character of these would-be employees, or sort of the, I would guess, kind of more grand scale look at what these potential employees look like.
Yeah. Another interesting piece with it is like they put some jump on and some don't. With regard to what I really want to happen is that these community influencers have a free car wash pass and come to the car wash often and see the team, see the young adults that they also see in school. There's this whole group accountability piece, I guess you'd call it, and wanting to be a part of developing them. Not some of them look at it like, oh, I can't take a freebie, and I was like, it's not a freebie. Like, I don't expect you to pay, to wash your car 5 times a week or even once a week. I really just want you to be part of the team. And if it means you come with a free car wash, whatever, that's easy. It just is that incentive to show up and see everybody. And I think that tends to work with the right people. So, and don't get me wrong. Like, I'm speaking very strategically right now. Like, it's not all bells and whistles. I don't do it right every single time. I got a couple that are great. I got a couple that don't really work out that well, and it works out in the numbers, I think. So.
I know another thing you talked about too, and you mentioned it earlier, was that the average age of your workforce, and talking about you trust these washes to relatively what would be considered relatively young professionals. And I know one thing that you'd mentioned in the interview in Car Wash Magazine was saying with your work being in the military, they were trusting you with something far more complex and a far more serious operation than what it is to run a car wash. Again, not to sort of downplay what the role that your employees have, but it's at the end of the day, like we say here, it's not brain surgery. It's any mistakes can be fixed, and if you give them the responsibility to run those things, assuming you're putting the right people in the right positions, there's no reason that they can't handle that.
Exactly, and I say I don't think you downplayed it at all. I mean a helicopter overseas is a thing. There's really only 3 people on it, and we have a lot of training. A lot of these guys are. A site manager has 25 people that range in age 15 to 16, I guess is the limit, but 16 to 20. So it really is. They have a lot of responsibility, but they're also pretty close to home. When they mess up, we're right there to help them. And I think the key is systems to inspect your expectations, so things can't get too far astray. Because they look at things different, and honestly, in many ways I grow too, because I don't necessarily look at it like they do, and they're the ones doing the work. So sometimes we change in ways that I didn't expect. And someone else asked me that one time before, well, who's creating the culture in your company? I was like, well, we are, but left and right boundaries. Like, obviously they can't go crazy out here, but inside those left and right boundaries, they drive it. So, and each site's a little different. It kind of depends on who you put in there.
So I want to talk a little bit about Sudzy itself too, and your initial concept. You say you want to come, to build this wash. How long was it before you said this is something that we want to scale, or that we're going to have the ability to scale? After you opened the first wash, or was that immediately plan one? Was we're going to, our plan is 5 sites or whatever it is right from the start, or was it something that that happened over time?
It kind of happened right away. As soon as we opened the first one, there was so much pent-up demand for what we were doing. I quickly realized, holy cow, this is awesome. Now, the second one didn't quite have the same penetration to that market as fast. It's been okay. It's not like the first one was. But I think that's what saw the scale. Our third partner, who is also the construction contractor that basically builds them for us, is now, he became a partner right after that first one. So he built the first one, and then we immediately approached him and said, hey, why don't you partner up with us? Let's try and scale this. And that's been a huge component too. I don't think we could scale it very easily without him. It's, our partnership group really allows for it. And I think that's key too. You obviously have to be able to generate the capital to scale it. And you have to be able to have the right people that are pulling the right strings, and having the construction guy in there is huge. So, which Shane's met. He's actually been out there too. So both he and I have been out there to visit Hoffman.
And so now we got number 3 on the way, or very close to being there, ready to go. So can you just talk a little bit about that construction process? Because obviously it's a winter build right now, which has to have its own challenges. It has it anywhere, but I have to assume in Alaska that you're probably coming up against a little bit more than we are even here in the Northeast. So what does that process look like for you, and what are some of those challenges that you're facing?
That's right back to my construction partner. Like, I don't know how he does it. He's like, it's crazy. Like with the one we have right now, it was supposed to open before the end of the year, but we've had multiple days where it's, double digits below zero, and then the wind will blow 30 miles an hour, and they've got these tents that they put over the buildings to keep them heated so that they can keep working, like building the roof and working, and the tents will blow off, and then you got a dump truck comes and picks up all the plastic, and then you put more plastic on it, and it's like, that happened like 3 times in December, and he just keeps plugging along, and I'm like, dude, are you sure we're gonna make this? And the next thing you know, the roof's on, everything's good to go. So he just doesn't give up. And I could see a lot. I see a lot of contractors that maybe just don't even try to tent. They're just going to wait till the spring, and so the projects get rolled out, and they end up costing more. Even though that sounds expensive, but you're still mobilizing the same people, and carrying the land tends to be pretty expensive too. So it's definitely creates its challenges. Like right now, MicroLogic is getting ready to come up to finalize the pay station side of it. So we're building a tent over that so it can be heated so they can do what they need to do. But this has been a pretty cold, blowy winter, especially where this third site is. So it's been extra challenging. Our first site was that way a little bit too. We built it in the winter as well. But yeah, it is what it is. I guess it's Alaska.
I know that's one thing that Nathan from Express Car Wash, when we had him on, he was talking about, when people are initially developing car washes, maybe for the first time, and when you're putting a lot of those projects out to subcontractors who may not actually have an idea of what it is to build a car wash. Now, clearly you're in a situation where you have somebody who's familiar with the process, which obviously makes things a ton easier when they have a sense of building layout and everything else to do that's going to have to go into the process, and especially building in winter, like you're saying. So obviously putting good people in the position to make it happen so you're hitting those deadlines and can fire up when you're ready to go.
Yeah, so again, back to Scott, our first one, we definitely have challenges. We were like, oh, we could fix this. Our second one, let's fix this. Let's go visit Hoffman. Let's see what they're doing. Like, what's awesome about this industry is people are so willing to share and help you figure it out. We're now making major retrofits to the first one that we probably we didn't even know about, honestly, back then. But one of the things is Scott also builds all the fuel stations in Alaska, really, or builds or manages a lot of them. So, or not manages, maintains. So I think that background really helped him tie it all together. But he's just, again, he's the kind of guy that looks at it and it's just, that doesn't make sense. Let's move this, let's move that. So we got pretty lucky on the first one too. It was pretty good. I mean, like I said, there were some changes, but we've learned along the way to where I think our fourth one, which we're going to hopefully break ground on next year, it's going to be a real rock star. It's going to be up there with a Hoffman wash.
So when you look at the changes you made then looking at these ones in terms of kind of the way you're equipping them and what the tunnel actually looks like for you in terms of an equipment package, I mean, I assume, I would guess that you're prepping all your cars, because I don't imagine there's anything else in there that's going to help you out in that situation where you are.
We work really hard. I mean, our first site takes a ton of prep. I mean, there's so much gross soils here. I don't really know how to put it in scale but we'll go through in the major season. We'll definitely pump each pit with a full vac truck, like a sewer vac truck, the size of a concrete truck. We'll pull a full one out every other week. And that's no problem, of solids. And then we'll be in the pit digging with mud that's, several feet deep. So I see some day in the life of a car wash stuff where they're pulling the mud out in Home Depot buckets. No, we don't. We get a Home Depot bucket on a car. So I think that part has been our biggest learning curve, is the pit and the way we manage those gross soils. Developing that and changing with what our first one was. Our first one, we just kind of go in and dig it out, and that's super expensive in the breakup season. So now we're trying to get it to where all that dirt moves out. Hoffman's helped us a little bit with some of that design side, but even then our third one, we're still realizing, man, the amount of slope we need in those pits, you start doing the math, you're pretty deep by the time you get to the sewer line. So it tends to be a constant challenge that we always come up with a little bit better way, and hopefully this one will be good, but I think the fourth one's already being designed to be better.
So what's the geographic distance between the three sites right now? What's the distance that we're talking between all three?
20, 30 miles, within a circle. So where Eagle River is our first one. That one kind of sits between the two counties of the Anchorage, which is the biggest population base, and then what we call the Valley or the Matanuska, who sit in a borough. So the two and three are in the borough, about 15 miles apart. Eagle River is maybe 20 from that, and then the next one will be in Anchorage. So all four, I don't know, 50 miles, 60 miles.
Both the base of where they're coming from, and also in terms of your customer base in terms of sort of unlimited penetration, those sort of things, does that vary by store? Is that different where you're seeing majority unlimited washes, or are you still just doing, is it still single washers coming through?
No, we're a majority. A big part of our business tends to be members, and we're constantly reworking the formula with which we determine that pro forma for new sites, because we do tend to pull a larger than normal market. Like if I take a pro forma from a lower 48 and run the numbers, like ours really doesn't fit in that in a good way. And so, our first pro forma for our first site was totally out to lunch on the wrong side, meaning it was good for us. The second one was okay. I think the third one is going to be, even a little bit tighter. Bank always asks the same question. They're like, "Well, you give us this pro forma, it doesn't match what you did." I'm like, "Oh, I don't really. It's hard to tell."
Right.
But we're getting better. We're learning for sure. We've been doing it for 3 years, so.
And in terms of volumes, this has got to be, I assume, you're probably your busiest time you're running now for the next 6 months or 8 months or so, kind of like around here.
Picks up in maybe end of November, early December, and really ramps up till about April, May, depending on when the snow melts, and then slows down again for Q3.
So I wanted to circle back to something else that you mentioned earlier in talking about Alaska being 5 years behind. So, at this point, if you're sort of ahead of the game in terms of being a tunnel operator there, are you seeing any of that at all that we're seeing around here in terms of the growth of the car wash industry there? Are there any other tunnels that are starting to look like they're popping up, or is it still, are you guys the main one in the game right now?
There's another operator who was here before us who's a really good operator. They tend to go more after pre-developed sites and then kind of redesign them, and I think that has to do with the cost. The entry to find a good contractor to do the work up here is a substantial barrier of entry. So I don't know. I mean, we've also got a car wash maintenance company that's sort of come out of this whole thing. Originally, it was just to take care of our own sites, and now it's starting to pick up business from other MBA operator and stuff like that. We have chemical brands, like we distribute direct for several companies now. That's a huge opportunity in Alaska, and again, it's because nobody's working that logistics chain component, and so I think that's really where the barrier of entry is. I'm sure somebody could throw a few $1,000,000 at it and figure it out, but at the end of the day, we've got a very shallow talent pool up here. We've got a very difficult logistics chain up here. We've got a very limited number of contractors that could pull off building one of these projects. And so it's just a small place, really. I mean, it's a huge state, small, but it's small. And so once you kind of carve out your niche like we have, which is kind of why I saw the opportunity and went after it, the barrier, it does become more difficult to compete. And, I think our goal is to obviously build out as quickly as possible and kind of control it to where someone else doesn't want to. And I think we've done that pretty well. But at the end of the day, if they come with help them sell chemicals or whatever they want.
Right, and I mean, at the end of the day, now you're already starting to establish your market share. So again, like you said, if you run your wash and do a good job at it, something that Nathan talked about too when we were interviewing him. He's saying you want someone to come to your wash and say, "Wow, I'd love to get in the car wash business. This looks like a great business, but I'm not going to do it here because I don't want to compete with this guy." Which is kind of the position that I think you're probably putting yourself into right now. Is that maybe it makes sense, but it doesn't make sense to go up against an already established brand like you guys have put in place there.
Yep. I think so too. And we're a very difficult. I mean, we everything we do is stainless steel, and like we're very leery of some of the brands that are maybe less robust, which is why we've jumped in bed with Innovate IT. Like you spend a little more money, but it's gonna last. And we're already having challenges with some of our stuff that's 3 years old. So I think when you look at that, you're kind of going, I don't know if this is something I want to jump into right now when you've got someone else that's figured it out.
So just looking ahead now, so I know you have you have 2 more sites in the pipeline. What are we looking at for coming up here for you guys?
We have one for sure that we've got the one we're going to finish here, and then that'll kind of wrap up what we're planning for that market. And then we've got a piece of land we acquired in August that goes to permitting here fairly quickly, and that's a like mega site right in the middle of downtown Anchorage area, midtown area. that one will really put us on the map in Anchorage. And then we've got a couple more ancillary sites that we're looking at. It just comes down to timing and what's available. There's just not a lot of open lots, so you're kind of looking at where can you go, or maybe you're even going to razz another building. So, because we aren't that interested in taking a current one, which there's not a lot of, and redoing it. We like new.
And I guess the advantage of that too is that you're building to your aesthetics and to your style, and that it's very much your building instead of, like you're saying, where you're just retrofitting kind of into someone else's design. At least this way, for everything from your back room to your tunnel, all that, you know what you need to be in control of, and to lay out to make it the most efficient and effective wash that you can be. So,
and operationally, like, they all run very similar. Like, I could take a site manager from one site to another, and it would be pretty much the same. Which I think is key too. We kind of have that overall enterprise efficiency, if you will.
Right, and I guess even though there's that separation between your sites, that it just provides consistency to your customer base too. They want to know they're going to get the same experience regardless of the location they're going to. So that just leads to that as well.
Absolutely.
So when you look at the Anchorage site, then is that something that you consider would be like the flagship store? Then is that the way it's kind of going to be looking for you?
Oh, Eagle River will always be the OG. But it's also the little engine that could, compared to the other ones at this point. It does pretty well. Eagle River's a really fun site. So, yeah. It'll be our first 160. So we've run 120-foot tunnels all along. The one in Anchorage will be 160. We almost went with a big double. Yeah, it is. We almost went with a big double, but I think it was Shane actually said, when you build two tunnels next to each other, that doesn't mean you wash twice as many cars. It just right. I'm like, maybe you learned that 20 years ago. I might take that advice. We'll see.
Well, I want to be sure I'm conscious of your time here, because I know we got to wash the fire up here. So I do want to let you go, but thank you again for the time. I really appreciate you joining today. Good luck on the startup for the new one, and we'll look forward to seeing more from you guys coming here in the near future.
All right, sounds good, Dan. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Jason. Well, that's it for today's show. Thanks again to my guest, Jason Woodward, for joining us. As always, you can find more about Innovative Car Wash at innovativecarwash.com. Subscribe to the Modern Car Wash podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.